Alright, welcome back. We're on deck. Prep test 86, I believe. Let me make sure. 86. Section 1. Logical reasoning. Start with question number 23. The issue, the pattern of reasoning in the argument above is most similar to that in which of the following arguments. So I'm here on the pattern of reasoning, how it develops. Let's see what I have here. The male bottle dolphins often carry objects such as weeds or sticks. Stop. So just picture in your mind the dolphin with the weed or the stick. The fact. Researchers first thought this was play behavior, but it is more likely to be a mating display. Again, stop, because that's the argument's conclusion. You first thought it was going to be play, but now you think it's going to be mating. So there was an expectation that wasn't realized, right? You thought, oh, they're playing. And so, crap, they're not playing, they're mating. All right? Next sentence. If it were play, rather than a mating display, we would expect females and juveniles to engage in the behavior, but only adult males do it. Stop. So you're looking for the pattern of reasoning. So the pattern, as best I would be able to break this down, is, you had an expectation. You had a first impression, right? The first impression was, oh, this stick, the dolphin with the stick, they're playing. All right, you play with the stick. But then you say, no, I don't think they're playing. I think it's mating display. And then you gather evidence that is consistent with it being a mating display. So, pattern, an expectation is not met. And once that's not met, there's an alternative explanation that you end up adopting. So that's what I'm looking for, an expectation. There's a conclusion here, right? So you can go from the conclusion back to the expectation if you want. In other words, here the conclusion is that it's more likely to be a mating display. Right? And you say, well, how did you get there? And you got there by a failed expectation because it doesn't look like it's for play. So if you want to follow it that way, but that's the pattern, a conclusion, that is, you reach it in that an original expectation was not met. My original expectation was they play, they didn't play. My conclusion is they mate. A. So think about just conclusion, expectation. So A, if there's a lot of traffic today, then Phyllis will probably be late to the meeting. But I expect light traffic today, so in all likelihood, Phyllis will arrive on time. Well, the conclusion is Phyllis will arrive on time, and the expectation is there'll be light traffic. So that's not contradicting. As a matter of fact, you could even think about reading the conclusion first and working back to the expectation. But A, the expectation is met. B, I expect the arborist to determine that this tree is diseased. If the arborist finds that the tree is diseased, then the tree will definitely be cut down, so it is likely that the tree will be cut down. Expectation met, not the answer. C, if the weather forecast called for heavy snow, then I would have expected Roy to cancel his trip to the mountain cabin. Indeed, Roy did cancel the trip, so it is likely that the forecast called for heavy snow. Expectation met. D, if construction of that building were on schedule, then I would expect the foundation to have been completed already. But the work on the foundation has just started, so construction is probably behind schedule. And that's the answer. The expectation is not met, and therefore the conclusion is adjusted. E, if Tamika makes a big sale today, I would expect her to celebrate tonight. So since Tamika will probably make a big sale today, she will probably celebrate tonight. No, expectation met. So the answer to number 23 is D for Drusus. Question number 24, the argument proceeds by. So proceeds by is, what's the argumentative technique? What's the method of reasoning? How does it proceed? Let's see how it proceeds. Andy Warhol's Brillo boxes is a stack of boxes that are visually indistinguishable from the product packaging of an actual brand of scouring pads. Stop. So that's Brillo boxes. It's from Andy Warhol. It was an artist, or was an artist. And it's indistinguishable from a regular box of Brillos. Next sentence. So that's just a fact. Warhol's Brillo boxes is considered a work of art, while an identical stack of ordinary boxes would not be considered a work of art. So I've got two seemingly identical, not seemingly, two identical displays, right? One is a work of art because Andy Warhol did that, and this one is not a work of art because an artist didn't do it. Okay? So those are just, again, another fact. Here comes my conclusion. Therefore, it is not true that appearance alone entirely determines whether or not something is considered a work of art. And that appears to flow from that argument, right? That appearance alone, we're stipulating that's art and that's not art. Appearance alone, they're identical. So the conclusion here is you're denying in other words, you're saying what is not true. What you're saying is, for the person who says they're both not works of art because they're identical in appearance, you're saying that person is wrong. So you're proceeding by disproving some of the position, which is you're wrong if you say that it can't be art because the appearances are identical. Okay, we'll see what we have here. So that's what I'm looking for is you proceeded by giving me a couple of facts and basically disproving an assertion. A, has he proceeded by highlighting the differences between things that are believed to have a certain property and things that actually have that property. And you see, it's the language from hell. This is like if you don't understand what A says, you shouldn't be trying this. You should be guessing and getting out of here. But what A is saying is wrong. It's not highlighting the differences between these things. It's highlighting the similarities between these things. B, is it demonstrating that an imposing argument lies on an ambiguity? What the hell does that mean? I mean, the opposing argument, which is, I suppose that that appearance alone determines art, is not an ambiguous. It's not relying on an ambiguity. It's saying it's not art. So, but man, they're evil. C, does it proceed by suggesting that two things that are indistinguishable from each other must be the same type of thing? Well, they got the first part of that right. They are indistinguishable, but they're not the same type of thing. One is a work of art, one is not. D, questioning the assumptions underlying a particular theory. Well, is it questioning the assumptions, or is it just kind of saying, you're wrong? So, you read D and you say, I'm not really sure what they're saying, but does this proceed by questioning the assumptions? And the answer is, it's not assumed. When you say it's not a work of art because it's identical in appearance, there's no assumption. It's an explicit statement. So, if I didn't know what the hell I was doing, I'd pick D. But in fact, D is not correct because it's not an assumption. You're not assuming. You're saying that's not art because these two things look identical. Okay. And E, how about, does it proceed by showing that something that would be impossible if a particular thesis were correct is actually true? How about that for really friendly language? And that's the answer, because that's what it does. It is showing that it would be impossible, according to the theory, that appearance alone decides whether it's art or not. According to that theory, it would be impossible to give Warhol's Brillo boxes the description of being art. And in fact, it is art. So, showing that something would be impossible, that couldn't be art, if a particular thesis were correct, is actually true. It's actually art. So the answer to 24 is E, and it's like, there are reasons if you get a 178 on this test, there's a reason for it, and it's like, it's very much, you're not testing the way the vast majority of human beings. And we'll finish it up for 25. Which one of the following arguments is most similar in its flawed reasoning? So here I just want to be alert to the reasoning has to be flawed, and then I'm looking for parallel. So most similar to is parallel. Let me see what I have here. So I want to see if I can get what was the reasoning, what was the nature of the flaw in the argument. So here it is. Stallworth claims that she supported the proposal to build a new community center. So stop for a second. There's a claim. I supported it. Okay? Next sentence. If Henning, so figure like Stallworth is number one, right? Person number one, right? And Henning is person number two. All right. If Hennings also supported the proposal, it would have received government approval. Okay. So if Hennings was on board, it would have been approved. Next sentence. Since the proposal did not gain approval, government approval, Hennings must have failed to back it, despite his claim to the contrary. So the flaw is pretty obvious, right? I mean, the flaw is pretty much out there, right? Is you basically have number one claiming I supported it, number two claiming I supported it. It fails, and somehow you decide that you should credit the first claim, the first claimant, and not the second claimant. You're saying yes, Stallworth was right. You haven't shown me that Stallworth was right and Hennings is wrong. I don't know who. If it took them both to do it, I don't know which one of them didn't, notwithstanding they each claimed it. So the flaw is you're crediting Stallworth over Hennings when there's no basis on which to do that other than that's what you want to do. Okay. According to the TV news, so you would then take this, right, and go, I'm going like this number one, number two, right? Stallworth is number one, Hennings is number two. So if I can line that up in the answer choices, right, there's got to be a number one and a number two, right? Okay, let me see, make sure I have that. And then, let's see, one's got to be credited and the other dismissed for no real reason other than one's being credited and one's being dismissed. That's what I'm looking for. That is the similarity. So according to TV news, that's number one. The traffic accident occurred on A Street. Okay? But if the accident occurred on A Street, Morgan could not have witnessed it from his kitchen window. Okay, so if it occurred there, Morgan could not have seen it. Got it. Thus, the newspaper report. Now, that's the transition. You notice how we started out with the TV news, right? That was number one, claimant number one. And claimant number one made this comment. It took place on A Street, right? And then we have this next statement. Well, you know what? If it took place on A Street, Morgan couldn't have seen it. Okay. Now we have, thus, the newspaper report. That's number two. Was mistaken in its claim that Morgan witnessed the accident from his kitchen window. Why? Why is the newspaper? Aren't you saying doesn't the TV news become Stallworth, and the newspaper become Henning? And aren't you doing the same bloody thing? So, again, this part of the test, if you're finding this part of the test really hard, you're really smart, because it is really hard. But the answer, would I keep reading? I mean, in a perfect world, I would. But it's not a perfect world. And with the time constraints I have, A is hitting number one, number two, and you're crediting number one for no apparent reason. So let's, for the video, go through it. B. According to the city government, number one, 15% of the city residents are behind on their property taxes. Okay? But according to Private Institute, number two, property taxes in the city are far higher than the national average for the cities of that size. Thus, it is the city government that is to blame for the high percentage of residents who are behind on their taxes. I mean, I'm not getting any similarity other than you have a city government and you have a private institution. I'm not getting any similarity to that original argument, where you're crediting one for the other with no reasoning. Here, what are you saying? You're saying, well, what does number one say? 15% of the residents are behind. Okay. What does number two say? The taxes in the city are far higher than the national average. Okay, they're saying different things, right? So no. C, according to Kapoor, the hazardous waste disposal site does not pose an imminent danger to the community. Okay, Kapoor would be number one, not a danger. But according to Galindo, number two, the site is located on an unsuitable tract of land. Okay, those two things don't contradict one another. Thus, if Galindo is correct, Kapoor's assessment is in error. Again, they're not. One, they're not saying credit Galindo. Here, it goes off hard. It goes off the path in that it's saying, well, if Galindo is correct, but that's not what the argument. It's not if Stallworth is correct. Stallworth is correct. D. According to Harris's political rivals, she consistently favors the interest of property developers. So I guess her political rivals are number one. A good mayor must be willing to stand up to the city's powerful interests, including property developers. Harris is thus a poor choice for mayor. I have no clue. When I don't see a similarity, I can't describe what the similarity is. E. According to the latest government figures, the regional unemployment rate declined in the last 6 months. Okay, government figures, I guess, would be number one. But the region lost thousands of manufacturing jobs in that period. The government's unemployment figures must therefore be inaccurate. Again, I'm not seeing. I'm just not seeing the similarity. So, 25. The answer is A. Again, just be aware that as you get to the higher number questions, you're very likely to encounter much more layered and sophisticated arguments.